Good. So we're down
Bottom
at
of the page? Bottom of the page.
At the bottom of Tov Ches. Yeah. And we reached the Maskana that the Zikorin Pnimi of the Brias is the Ike Inyan of the Zichorinois, and Alidei the Zikorin the Kashrus Pnimius Kaviocha in the Shamis Yisrael is B'derech Mamera the Zikorin al Kol Seida Ishtav Shalom. We saw different inyonim in that, and then we were married a bit Benegel, and then the Nusach HaTfilah brings rayas min HaTorah l'tmeich v'lechazik inyonim elu, and so we saw that the raya Benegel to Noach indicates. Or the raya that we bring, or the posik rather we bring that mentions Noach, that's the beginning of the psukim that bring a raya to the Zichronis, which in Yonim is the bris pnimi with the neshamas. And then we have to say that Noach was a inyan miyuchad bi'atzmei, that even though there was no further hemshech from Noach benegeh to maginim v'tzadikim v'chule, except for Inyan of Malchi Tzedek, Melech Sholem, of a Be'iken, the Zikorin of Noach, is the Ava Atzmiyas to Neshamas Yisrael, to the Maila of Neshamas Yisrael, Mitzad Atzmon. Bli Inyan Shel Hemshech, or Bli Inyan Shel Ashpoel, of Koladeras Kulam, or the Etziminyan of a Neshama, which Sof Kol Sof, he was shaykh to the Hemshech of Neshamas Yisrael. And that's the inyan for the Ava Atzmiyas Kilu Lolo Kol Hemshech Lolo Kol Tnai. Ma'ashenkin inyan the Zikorin of the Oveis, that was a different inyan, that they were Kilu Mamshich after them, the inyan from Maginim and Tzadikim Atzov Kol Adoyres, that became the inyan of the Hemshech, and therefore we see a different inyan in the Zikorin of the Oveis, that Rak Ba'avisecha Choshech Hashem, but also indicates Aini van Ava Atzmiyas, but we see that it has a slightly different pu'ula, that it's not only the Nizko Ali Deze al Klolis Ishtauchelas, but even of Hatzola Vatikun Legabi the Seid Ishtauchelas. But we see that Moshe Rabbeinu mentioned the Indian from Schutz Ovis, Kama Piomim in the Torah, but that was only Benekeh to the matter of needing a tikkun and a hashloma, but that was Tafki Bisman, that was a kitrug al Neshamas Yisrael. And B'shas there was a kitrug, Moshe was marich in the inyan from Schutz Oves, and Tafki Azman Shaloi Kediboy was nepach le'inyan Shal Kediboy. And remember, that's a sign that the inyan of the Oves have a further koyach, not just that the Zikorin is in Etzem Nishmos on Hey, on the Etzem Ha'ava to the Neshamas, or the Hemshech and Neshamas as well. But I feel about even Kozer that it can be Matzil Me'a'efach, Me'al Shaloi Kediboy L'Tachus Haritzoi. Al Chaponim, we see that there was a further inyan of Psukim, but I get to the Oves, what in Yonim is Oed Lifnei Matan Torah Al Chaponim. So once again, it's also mitzad the Ava Atzmiyas, not mitzad the inyan from Kiyum HaTorah or mitzvahs. Aber it's a inyan from Ava Atzmiyas, which mitzad Avram Avinu is already shaykh to Torah mitzvahs. So of course, the inyan from Matan Torah began with Avram Avinu, Alpi Pnimis Advarim Al Chaponim. And so there's already the beginning of the inyan. But Ika, we see once again it was the inyan of the Zikorin in the Maila Atzmiyas of Neshamas Yisrael, and therefore it was a inyan from Torah. Benegeh the inyanim bilti rutoyim, and then we see the Zikorin Yetzias Mitzrayim, also Shehoya Rak Mitzad Atzmo, Mitzad Rotzon Ha'atzmi B'Neshamas Yisrael. That's already an inyan Benegeh LaPesach. We see that the Zikorin of Yetzias Mitzrayim is also a Zikorin which is Moira, or that inyan. Would you know how to turn that thing on? No, you don't. Okay. I think Morris or Shimon, no, so they come. I think we have this working, but I don't think we know how to turn this on. And we see that the whole Inif in Yetzias Mitzrayim, I opened that to let in fresh air. I mean, it was very stuffy here. That the Nakud of Yetzias Mitzrayim is also the Inyan from the Maila, Mitzad Rotzen Atzmi of Neshamas Yisrael, Mitzad Atzma. Because we see that the whole Laila Aseda, and the whole Inyan, the whole Godesh of Pesach, Mo'ero and Madgish, Kama Piomim, that it was all in an open from Milmaila Lamat. It wasn't mitzad the fact that the Yidden were Lamat, that they were worthy of the Geula Ki'ilu. The whole Inyan was we had Orim the Eliob and get to the Inyan from Mitzvahs, with the whole Inyan, Mavua, that the whole Yitzia, Mitzrayim was in an open from Milmaila Lamata Biika. And that was the Rebbe, the Zikorin of Yetzias Mitzrayim is also a derech zeh, just like Noach and the others had the Zikorin in the Etzem Mile of Neshamas Yisrael Mitzad Atzmon. Similarly, the Inyan from Zikorin of Etzem HaYetziah Mitzrayim is also Megale or Mare of the Etzem Rotzen Milmaila in Neshamas Yisrael Mitzad Atzmon, because they themselves were Mishukoim b'mem tash shari tuma with the whole riches we find when we get to the Agoda. And the Mamela said the Rebbe Alidei say ye Mamela azikorin al kol ha'ishtaushlas. Since the Eibishter is moira the zikorin after his kashas pnimi in the etzem mile from the Shomes mitzad atzmam, I feel how they were lifnei matan Torah, I feel how they were lifnei the etzem kiyum Torah mitzvahs b'poil, even though mia oves. It was moving that would come out the generations which would eventually be Makabel the Torah. Over the Inyan was Be'isa Hazman, purely mitzad de Neshamas, and the Milas HaNeshamas, as Kol Zeh, Hu Mipnei She'arotzen, Hu Atzmi She'ein Shum Siba Lazeh. So how do we get onto that whole Inyan? We began to discuss the mile of Rotzen, like Gabi Oineg and Oineg V'Rotzen, we began to be mafalvo b'inyan zeh, so we got onto the whole inyan of rotzen ha'atzmi milmaila in Neshamas Yisrael. And since it's a rotzen ha'atzmi, b'mera ein b'zeh shum hagbolas or shum medidas v'hagbolas, but b'ike ein b'zeh shum siba. No, there's a mitzad the etzem inyan of Neshamas Yisrael and the etzem inyan of Elakus mitzad atzmoi, atzm sein say. That's the pshat. Ain't shum siba. No, this is mitzad the etzem rotzen bilvad. But and that's what we saw. Rak ba'avishecha choshak vayiv kla bazaram achro. It was inyan from bechira atzmi is the local siba. We mean here in this particular inyan, we mean that ain't shum siba. I feel that the inyan from oinek, because normally rotzen and oinek go together, but it's not the pshat that rotzen is nigram halidei oinek. That Oineg is a Sibba l'Rotzen. Rotzen v'Oineg a Shneihem Giluim Atzmim from the Nefesh. So where you have a Gilu, and they're both from the same, as you might say, Shorish Be'etzem HaNefesh, the same Mokim Be'etzem HaNefesh. Mameli, if the Rotzen is Mizkare pure mitzad the Etzem, the Rotzen ha'atzmi, there's also in that a initial Tainug. But the Tainug also becomes mitzad the Etzem, not mitzad that it's a Sibba to the rotzen, or fuch. You can have a rotzen, you can have a tainug atzmi l'loi rotzen. They're not necessarily a tam and a goyrim one to the other. No, each one of them, but since they both come mitzadi shleimus and the shirish atzmi, when one is meir, but the other one is also meir. But belish zeh yes sibol zeh. It just that since they're both mi'oisha ashreira, so it doesn't meir mitzad ha'etzem, mitzad shorish ha'atzmi, and the other one's also benimta. However, we'll soon see that the inyan of oinig is nimta, together with rotzen, not only in boivin she'ein loy siba, but gam ein loy rav davki she'esh loy is a giluy ashpur b'shas ma'aseh. He can be b'takus ha'heler, even though he's the inyan from the tainug ha'atzmi is nimta b'techa rotzen. Aber lav davki is a begola. In these particular inyanim that we're talking about here, the Indian begola is the rotzen ha'atzmi באביסך, ויבכה בזרם, גם בנויה. So the whole mile was מצד אהבה עצמית, אהבה עצמית is רוצן. In נשומת ישראל. וכמו כן הוא ברוצן העצמי, that's מצד נומיילה. That's the רוצן העצמי of כביכול. מלמיילה in the union of the רוצן העצמי, I'm sorry, in נשומת ישראל. Do you know how to turn this thing on? Do you have any idea how to do it? Well, I think we have this running, but we're not sure about that. That's how it is מצד האבשטה to the נשומס. וכמי כן הוא הרוצן העצמי the נשומס ישראל באלוקות. Yeah, the מלמטה למעלה is also the same. They didn't have a רוצן העצמי. You didn't have a רוצן העצמי. Just check if it's working properly.
Is this record?
Yeah. They didn't also מלמטה למעלה. They have a rotzen mitzad the etzem in Elokut. So once again, the rotzen is a gilui of the etzem. It shows that mamish in the etzem, but it's in a two different reifanim, like we saw. The oinig is dafki in even from pnimius, the eino from the veikes v'iskalus betoicha etzem, v'aliyah v'dveikes betoicha etzem. In a rotzen is dafki gilui, iskalus, yelida v'amshocha b'gilui. Whatever we call rotzen chitzoni and tainu pnimi, but not that means a moral judgment. We don't mean that the rotzen is chitzoni. We mean that it's a inyan from his galus v'amshocha u'merutzo. It's a inyan from the running of the etzem klapei chutz, klapei giloi. Ve'ilu the inyan from oinek is a inyan from aliyah v'dveikas in the etzem. And therefore he said the inyan from rotzen ha'atzmi, the neshama Yisrael, Be'elakusu, biskashus atzmi, b'li shum siva v'tam klal. In other words, that even though there is a tainug amiti ve'atzmi b'toit that rotzen, but it's not necessarily begolui in the odom. B'shas ma'aseh, the ikeh that brings him to that iskashus atzmi is only the rotzen atzmi, but not the inyan v'noinek. וכמוי במסירות נפש, בפועל ממש, על קידוש השם, שאין בזה שום הרגש עוינג כלל. Yeah, b'shas ma'aseh, it's only mitzad the ikshus and the am kshayelu and the rotzen ha'atzmi that he devotes himself to Elokus l'loik afila chas v'shorim or ch'mahoy eloisiyah afila b'inyan chayo. And so that the Rebbe puts in brackets, and we mentioned the other night that this was mamish what I was learning with the Bochum in some of Mishkelent or Dina Kuda. And the night before we learned this last week, Shim hoyo b'zeh eize hergesh oineg Yochel liyah shaloi hoya be'afshari liyah is b'mesiras nefesh b'poel mamish. Sharei haseichel ena mechayev inan ha'mesiras nefesh. V'hainu she'ena maniach limsor nafshei b'poel mamish. Ukemoi kein hu gam ba'tainu. So here's a chiddush that I feel will say that the rotza, it can occur. It does actually occur. It's brought down in Mekemus Mesiyomim, do it in some of all, in the ganze Arichas. The Rebbe brings down that sometimes the rotzen ha'atzmi is also megala the tainug ha'atzmi. That's not behechreyak. That doesn't have to be. On b'der klal it's nicht so. But it can sometimes happen that together with the rotzen ha'atzmi there's also a gilui the tainug ha'atzmi. What we find out sometimes in the Indian from Ahavas Reim and Ahavas Chaverim, and sometimes he has a rotzen rak liyedid zel a rei a ploini. And then there's Miskala also in from Tainug Atzmi, how do you call it, Iskashras, in that person, in an even from Oinik, which is Loi Gamkein Loi Shakel Shum Goyrim Chitzainin, this is in from Atzmi, say Iskashras, and Atzmi, so Tainug. So the Rebbe said, just imagine if B'shas the Indian from Mesiras Nefesh, there would be a gilui of the hergish of that Tainug Atzmi, which is B'lav Ochideh, Mikivan She'arotzen B'gilui, is also the Tainug Atzmi is also there. He doesn't feel it, it's a Loi B'gilui. So the Rebbe says here, Achidish Otzo. He says, Ilu Hoya that Tainug Atzmi B'golui, then it could be that he wouldn't be Moise Nefesh B'poyo. The Indian for Moise Nefesh B'poyo can only be mitzad the rotzen, the am kshair of the etzem, how do you call it, the tekifas, am marutzas harotzen, aber not mit Iru, die Inyan von Teinig would be Begolo Shema. It could be. I mean, Yacholiot come that he would be. He said, aber Yacholiot, he said he wouldn't be Moisa Nafshe Papoyo. And he brings also an Inyan von Seichel. He said, because Ein Seichel, Machaye. Yeah, Inyan Mesiras Nefesh. So come over, Bahar B'drushim, but that the Seichel is Marli Mat the Inyan von Mesiras Nefesh. That mitzad Seichel, a mensch can't be Machayev himself. He can't bring a raya sichlis li'atzmi that he should give himself away. And be Moishe Chayev, al Kiddush Hashem v'chulu. But that can only be in a even l'mayla miyat Seichel. So the Rebbe says, k'may keinu gam b'tainu. It wasn't going to catch one with the other. And therefore we saw over there in Perik Kuf Tzadik Beis. We learned that in Kuf Tzadik Gimel, also not far back in the Hemshot, we learned that the Inyan of Chochma, the Koyach HaChochma, not the Koyach HaBina. There's also a Gilui Oineg in Bina, but that's another Inyan. That's a Gilui mitzad the Srachavus, or the Teichef HaAlchova that there is in Bina. But the Etzem Gilui Oineg Mamish is in Chochma. And therefore Chochma Sodom, Toya Ponov, Tzavu Ponov, Shal Rebbe Yavuhu, but the ganze Arichas at the Inyan von Oineg is Miskala Daki B'Chochma, but that means that Chochma becomes, as it were, a Lavush, a Megale, but it's also Mailim of the Etzem Hishgalas at the Atzmis Atayno. But there can maybe be certain cases where the Inyan von Koyach HaChochma can even be a Kli or a Lavush to the Gilui Atzmis Atayno. So the Rebbe said, it follows if he's there, that Chochma is the one koyach which can be like Kli to the, because that's what he said of them, Perikov, to the base, that Oineg is a Beloi Kli, being as it is, Mamish in the Etzem, and in Yonehu, Lahalim, B'toicha Etzem, or Lishdabik, Lahalis, Esatzme B'toicha Etzem, and not the Inyan from Giloi, therefore the Inyan from Oineg is like a Beloi Kli. It's like Shalamayla Mikaelim Megamre, but the Inyan from Chochma is a koyach when it becomes a medium and a form of a kli. And later on in the Hemshech, he must be that it's even more than a kli. Kilo Etzem Oineg, Etzem Chochma become like one Inyan. That Chochma is Oineg be'etzem. So therefore, the Inyan from the Ein and Einzige vessel or the Ein and Einzige kli. Ein and Einzig Kazach, which Kilo is Mishyachid with the Inyan von Oineg, but even shall Kli, or even shall, maybe I say, Begolui, it does Chochma. So therefore the Rebbe said, Chochma is Sokoso, the Haskolos HaSeichel. The Inyan von Sokoso, the immediate Inyan von Chochma is the Koyach HaOdem, which is later Masbi to him, Wuje Tuta, and wie say, sein Anhoge, al Pi de Seichel, Kamun, the Seichel, the Kedusha, Betach, the Seichel from Kabbalah Seil, the Kedusha. Or he said, Tzokos of Seichel can be Masbi to be Makabal oil and to do the Avis's will, keeps there, return Avis, Tachlis, Hainian, Shlichusei, Boilam Azeh, und der ganze Ariches, aber die Inyan von Seichel wird nicht Masbi sein, Schädel sein der Matthias. Eipach in der Matthias hat der Seichel nicht kennen. Immer wie Paulus Oineg in Seichel, ultimately become Mishyachid. And the Inyan von Reishis HaSeichel auch upon him is a Lavush auch upon him to the Etzem Inyan of Atzmius HaOineg. Therefore the Rebbe said if it was purely mitzad Atzmius HaOineg Yesh Listapik if they would come to the Etzem Inyan, because ultimately speaking the Inyan von Oineg and Chochma Misachid B'yachad. Now we have to say that that's an indication. Well, from that we see a raya muchachas that Tzokosot the koyach haki toike takiv, and the koyach haki atzmei eitzel haodam is returner. Even though we say ein la maila mi'oinig, we mean in the Inyan from dveikes klapi maila. Aber when I get to the etzem Inyan from poil mamish, ein dover la maila mi'oinig. That's what we say. Ein lachadova, ein b'fnei harotzen. The Inyan von Rotz is the koyach haki takiv. And that's not a steer to the fact that Oineg is a dover maila b'yoisa, aber es wird nicht says the Zayin Ha'inish V'Chochem. Ashkin Rotzen doesn't reckon with anything. Rotzen fragt nicht bei keinem nicht, und Chochem nicht. Sorry, Rotzen beklau nicht mischashiv im Shum Dover Shel Ha'ora. Ashkin Oina Gea, after the Oina Ge'atzmi, so it reckons and is mishkale, mishachid with the Inyan from Chochmah. And therefore, says the Rebbe, al zeh bilvad, efshel l'smoch b'inyan Mesilas Nefesh. Brach out the Inyan from Rotzen Atzmi. Well, it's a Chiddush Nifla. It's stated in some of the Zolbazar. In almost Ba'isam Amilium. He says the same thing over there in some of them. But we say Mishtameya, that even though Ein Lamayla Mi'oinig, mitzad Dachis Agilu, mitzad Dveikis, in the Inyan from Etzem, of a Benegela Tuikev, yeah, and what you might call, ultimately getting things done. Ein Lamayla Mi'harot. The Rotzen is the key taki.
Well, wasn't Rabbi Akiva Moisa Nefesh the Oinig? Didn't he have an Oinig?
Well, there can be a Gilui from the Oinig, because the Oinig is Balav Ochidel, like we said. But it's only a Ha'ora from the Oinig. It's not the Amitius, Achmius, or time. They stay. For kids, it's even brought down sometimes that was like it depends which way you learn it. It's even brought down that was a certain chalishis in the Kavioch and the Mesilas Nefesh of Rabbi Akiva. The Akiva he wanted, but that was mitzad a certain oinig, mitzad. That's only a ha'or of etzem oinig. And it's even brought down in Silas that that's not necessarily the Mila of Rabbi Akiva. The Etzem Mila was the Mesilas Nefesh B'Poel, not the cure of the fact that he looked forward to it, or he wanted it, Kaviyah. But it's put down in some Sforim, those state that there's no Tainuk. Yeah, but in other Sforim it's put down, even the Besifrei Chassidus Chabad, it's mentioned that Shas the Etzem, what I put Achmanin, it's like the not already Gishmach Tofik to talk about it, is Moisa Atzmi, B'Kiddush Hashem, then it's brought down that he can be Mesanig in the Yisurim. He can actually be Mesanig in the Yisurim. But I don't think that's a Gilui of the Inyan HaOinig. That's weiter the Rotzen. The Rotzen is Ad Kedei Kach, that it brings you to forget about this. He's Ad Kedei Kach, he's full of the Inyan, as Avamira, it's Ki'ilu that Loi Magish. I don't know if you could say he's Mesanig. I'll upon him Loi Margish. If Loi Margish, that's how you saw it. That's mitzad the Inyan from Teikev HaRotzen, not mitzad the Gilui HaOinig. I forget. Where we mentioned the Gilui HaOinig in that Inyan, that somewhat plays down the Teikev HaInyan. And it's not that which actually brings it B'Poel Mamzer. It state that. I mean, it says it could be. The Rebbe doesn't say no way that it could possibly be, but he says yesh lema that it could be. Yochel liyos, that wouldn't be enough. That's the Meilach and the Rotzen. Rak mitzad harotzen ha'atzmi, dahainu etzem ha'ishkashus haneshama b'elikus, she'ef sheloi klal yesh nifrad chas v'sol. Yeah, those are the nikud. That's not there in the Inyan from Oinig. I mean, not that Oinig would talk about being nifrad. But it could be that it wouldn't be Mechayev, the Etzem Mesilas HaChayev.
Even though, what about Kalut and Nefesh? That's not from Oinig.
Klot and Nefesh.
Aluf?
Kalut and Nefesh, that's not from
Klois and Nefesh.
Kalut and
Nefesh.
No, that we spoke about already. Those in Samvov, he's married in that. But the Klois and Nefesh is only what he feels that this is Teivose Ha'amiti. He said, that's only a ha'ora from Etzem HaTainuk. As they bring it. And therefore there's a Inyan from the Rotzen Yisrael Talzeh, B'Shlita Gemura. And that's where we find the Alter Rebbe, that he jumped out of the circle and he said, no way. And said, why? Because Baal Kochach HaTachoy. Balkocha Tacho is the Ratzon Ha'atzmi weiter. So, verkehrt, in some way brings a rifle, not that it's not a Inim. Shel Tainug Ha'atzmi, it's a Aurav in the Tainug Ha'atzmi. And he feels that that's his best. He said, the Bnei Achai, we were talking about more on the Madregas, the people, they just went out, and even usually B'Shas Meiser, that they can't kill or stop. That's the biggest geschmack they could possibly imagine. So the Rebbe said, well, you feel that's a dein geschmack, and that's only a Aurav in the Amitis HaNefesh. Here the Rotzen not feeling what's geschmack. Das ist just am Kishei Erev, Azoi Muzai. EF Shali Yisacher. So big verkehrt, the Inif and Klois HaNefesh. And that was certain people who didn't stop, they just went out. But that was Kilo HaChisoron. It's brought down in Bamidim, it's even HaChaim. That's what the Alter Rebbe said to the Rebbe at the last moment. He stopped him. Even though he was a shooter for that Batchila, the Alter Rebbe. But then he clapped what was going.
Why do we find a lot of the Frierdiker Rebbe's Hasidim had Mesirat Nefesh and Kiddush Hashem?
Yeah, das ist mitzad der Rotzen, nicht mitzad der Einig. Das ist nicht kein von Einig.
Okay, so
das ist Rotzen, we're doing it.
Where did it come from? Why
the Rotzen, the Rotzen Atman?
Why
Good is give a cook, a Rebbe Amiti, a Nossi Amiti, he can be Moer. Ja, Moshe Rabbeinu, noch hecher von Moshe Rabbeinu. He can be Moer the Rotzen Amiti, the Rotzen Atzmi. Aber das ist Rotzen, das ist nicht Einig. Ja, das ist nicht die Einig von Einig, das ist die Einig von Rotzen. And therefore it could be that they want magish, the Yisurim. Aber das ist mitzad der Rotzen, not mitzad Taina. Nicht mitzad Einig. That's what he said. If mitzad Einig, afilu mitzad der Einig Atzmi, a kol b'teicha Rotzen Atzmi, it could be you couldn't rely on it. Because it doesn't mechayev the Eipach of Chayev.
No, I was asking where it came from. So it came from the Rebbe.
It came mitzad the Yisurim of the Etzem. Yeah, a nefesh of a Yid. Of what causes that Yisurim of the Etzem? Well, that's a Rebbe, being as he is. The Etzem of all the Etzems says he can be Mo'er of that.
He told you, there's a sikha. He said, he stood up and he said, throw yourself in the sea of
the Rebbe says, there was a famous sikha about it once, huge fat. And the Rebbe said that Gufa was the greatest Mesiras Nefesh on the part of the Rebbe, that he was Mo'er others to Mesiras Nefesh. As our Mesiras Nefesh, if he does, we can't possibly be Matayah Latzmei. I mean, if he bothered the Rotzen Shibba Rotzen Ha'atzmi, Mamish Mushush Ba'atzmi, Mamish, to tell other people to go. It does a L'mayla Mikol Medida V'Akbol in the Rotzen Ha'atzmi Gufa. So if you got somebody on that Madrega, then he's more your Rotzen Ha'atzmi. You follow? And there was even the famous Mahajan with the Rebbe, when the Rebbe early in the Nasiya, the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach. But the Rebbe told people to go out on shlichus. But there were certain people, the Rebbe called them in and said he wants them to go out on shlichus. Where's that? Well, that was it was a similar inyan. I mean, it wasn't Rahman. It's like sending him into the fire or sending him into a concentration camp. It to a certain extent wasn't all that much different. Taking a man mit seinem Sprache, mit seinen Kindern, schickst ihm raus, ich weiß wohin. In a spiritual desert, you say, and two. So as once the Rebbe said to one of the Ingelites, he said, I'm giving myself away, in a way much more by asking you to do it than what you're doing before. And there was once a young man, he came in, and the Rebbe said to him, listen, I want you to go out here and there. And he said, Rebbe, I got a deer, somehow I've just bought myself an apartment or something. I said, and the Rebbe just sort of looked down. Yeah. And the Rebbe said, ich rein, wegen Mesiras Nefesh, what do I scorn is was meret. And you're talking to me about deer, The Rebbe just dropped. I'm being mafil, the most unbelievable Mesiras Nefesh, and tell you to go out there. So when the guy heard that, he begged for forgiveness. In the end, he has gefallen. He went. He said, Rabbi, please, I didn't realize how that way. So that's a noch a hecher of Mesilas Nefesh. Ulai, I mean, over there, you send a person to Rachmon in it land. It's other Chaim, other Moritz, Over there, you send a man for the whole of his life, the ganze Leben sein. Mad Meir Vesrim. He's not going to come back from the sleep, that's what you said. Ulai Azor Mishab. And you send him, Vazare, V'kol Hanil V'molov, into a Chaysu Ayin, into a spiritual desert. You set him gay. As I'm in Mesilas Nefesh, weiß a Mensch gar nicht, what it is. Remember, that's more error by another person also the in Rotzen Art. Rak mit der Rotzen Art, wenn er etze mich kasher, she efsheloi klal li is nifrad chas v'shodim. But we see that that's in many cases the Indian like that when the Rotzen Art, it comes in the form of a shlila. It comes in the form of dos nicht, zelo. In other words, in yonim which are hipach elikus zelo. And therefore we find in many cases that the loy koidem lav koidem lahain, that there's a mile in the meaning of lav, feel out the meaning of hain. In other words, the daki dos nicht, bishum even zelo, the union of not being nifrad, does it go a tifa union in the Rotzen Achmi itself. So he said, the Chasvishon Ali Deizeh, who Moisa Nafshi Bepoil Mamish, V'lo Yichbar Alov L'Kabu Kola Yisurim. So here we see clearly that the Yisurim are not mitzad the Tainu, no, the Yisurim are mitzad the Rotzen. I mean, the Kabbalah's Yisurim. Mitzad the Rotzen, Rak mitzad Etzem Ishkashusai. What that Ishkash is the Rotzen. The Kol Zeh, who Rotzen Beloy Tainu. You see, it doesn't have to do with the Inifanoinik. Okay, my mitzvahs, hanikroim chukim, said the Rebbe. The beder klau, harei mitzvahs, the beder klau. Harei mitzvahs, ein b'chinas rotzen, shelamayla me'atam. The ein tam l'rotzen. Generally speaking, the majority of mitzvahs are below ochi. A few mitzvahs which are not chukim. They're in from rotzen below tam. So once again, it doesn't mean that there's no tam klau, there's no oinik, at least. Because tam can also mean oinik, doesn't necessarily mean seichel. Because when the Rotzen Atzmi is miskaleb, yesh betoichoi below tainu atzmi. When we say it's a Rotzen below tam, that tam is not popoyo, that tam is not a sibo or a goyrem to the kiyum of the inyan. It's only benegir to, as we'll soon see in a minute, benegir to, we're not here, but further on, we'll see the benegir liyosid lovei, that if you were Mekayim me'anet mitzad the Rotzen below tam, then liyosid you'll be zeiche also to that gilui of the tainu v'atzmi. Kemuvah barich is a tzuma in the first Hemshech HaSamkval. Kamoya mitzvahs anikoim kruchim der klau arei mitzvahs bedeber klau arei mitzvahs ein b'chinas Rotzen shlamala me'atam. The ein tam l'Rotzen. V'loch ein mitzvahs lav lehenes nitnu. Well, that's a klau in mitzvahs that you're not meant to have any hanua. No, as the Gemara says, mitzvahs lav lehenes nitnu v'gezeirus hamelech alavodo. The whole in a mitzvah is only mitzvah the gezeirus hamelech. Meaning, you're not supposed to have any personal hanua or oining for mitzvah, and also you're not supposed to have any monetary benefit or any tosefes. I mean, mitzvahs lav lehenes nitnu is a big general musar. It's got different ifanim to it. The Rebbe said, why mitzvahs lav lehenes nitnu? Because they are rotzen below tam. In other words, they're rotzen below oinek. So even though there is oinek there, but it's not pekolo. And mamela, since it's not pekolo, it's an ish bepoel. It's a low poel bekiyum mitzvah. What's this poel? In the rotzen atzmi bilvad. And therefore, so the Rebbe said that's pekolo mitzvahs. Chutz mi ulai mitzvahs musuyomis. But he brings down there on some of our very interesting nakuda that there are mitzvahs musuyomis where we do find ha'inyan from ha'oras ha'inyan al-kaponim is ki'ilu mishkaber kitzas ha'inyan ha'rotzen sheba mitzvahs. And that's what we find when we get to the mitzvahs where it's mafurish lehem tam. but they're given a tam mesuyam, and you're not really Mekayim the mitzvah unless you have Mekayim that tam. And interestingly enough, one of the dogmas was the mitzvah from Sukkah. For example, the Alter Rebbe, at the beginning of the Sukkahs, the Alter Rebbe brings down gleich auf dem Platz. He says the inne von Kiyum mitzvah Sukkah hu zeicha la'anone hakovet v'kashiyeshu b'sukkah yiskavein le'inyan anone hakovet hiki v'isano kodesh baruch hu v'hoitzi oisano mimitzrayim orichas. What the Alter Rebbe says, the Rebbe learns up from there in many places, that if you're not Mekayim that time, then you don't think about that time. You're not miskaven with times there. When you sit in the sukkah, then you're not Mekayim the meaning for mitzvah sukkah. As it comes to but wachein yiskaven b'shas yishiyos the Alter Rebbe bring the stam katamim or hagadatas in mitzvahs or manas yelahavish b'tamim or b'droshi. Therefore, the fact that he writes that mamish is a simon that the internet that's a mitzvah where kilo there's a certain niskabras of the yoinek ala rotz. Or auch upon him the mishtalvim zeh bezeh, that if you're not makayim that inim for the yoinek bedoven the time, then you're not makayim the and therefore there's a special chavivus in mitzvah sukkah. B'shas a man zit to the sukkah, he feels a yoinek mesuyam afal pius mitzvah slav lehernes nitno. Aber auch upon him he feels a gewaldige oinig, chudes is mefurza. And therefore a certain mitzvahs, what they have in themselves, a certain chavivas, that's one of the negele mitzvahs nea chanike, but also nea moral zeh, ribui tamim, ribui inyonim. What I say is that they're a chelik from the etzem inim. But once again, the etzem nea chanike is lav lehenes, you're not allowed to be nene. It's not a nea which is lehenes, mimeno klar, also lehenes. We see that there's a special chavivas and iskalas of the yoinig in them mitzvah. And the same with mitzvahs too. And the Alter Rebbe is married in Simon Kofei. The reason why we put on tefillin is kaf v'kaf liska v'nisim she'osalanu v'yitzias mitzrayim v'ava parshiyos keneged inyan nisim she'osalanu v'chulu. Again, tzarichas in what people learn from that also, that it's mashma mizeh that one of the inyonim in mitzvahs tefillin is actually to be mekayim that zikorin. You have to actually be miskaven leinin zeh b'shas ha'anocha. But that's yotzim min haklal when you get to the inyan mitzvahs. But auch upon him, rov mitzvahs is not boifen kozeh, nor that you do them purely mitzad derotze. That's inyan for mitzvahs lav lehenes nitno. Aber fragt a mitzvah shein b'chinas chukim, how much more so are those mitzvahs where it's written beklalet, you're not supposed to have any time, you have ein lecha reshus lahara, you're not even permitted to look for a time. V'chuli, no, you purely have to do the mitzad de'inim from Kabbalah, so, because every pamela nimtzal, if he's there, that there's a tzad shova in other mitzvahs that they're doing malch upon into the inyan chukim, and you do what the Rebbe is married bezeh, the Rebbe Melech HaMashiach and Kama Mekayimais, that there's a tzad hashova b'chol mitzvahs that you have to be mekayim them, but even shalachukim. V'kol zeh hu mipnei sha'rotzen ha'achmi yesh ha'ein ha'tayna b'bchinas siba or eilov. In other words, that there might be a inyan behelem, unlike a inyan from iskalus b'teich ha'mitzvah or the tayna ha'achmi, but the tayna is not a siba, ein as it called goyrem. You just have to be mekayim mitzad the inyan harotzen. And if there is a inyan for ein lezeh shaychas shel tam or siba to the inyan akiyum, except for one or two inyan, like we said, where there's a certain isgabris of the yoinik or auch upon him, a certain iskalus of the yoinik imarot. But that's yotzim min haklal. Now they bring to dot in some of all, but ein rov mitzvahs kaf. That's what he says here. Kommt da ist a Peredi gesagt, that Rotzen v'oinig ein lehem shum yachas, or on the contrary, they're even season, that's what we're going to say one or the other now, they're even inyonim hafochim zeh mizeh, but being as they are, both giluim min ha'etzem, therefore they can be miskale biyachad, aber lav bo even that they're noisen siba or goyim one to the other. They're just there. And sometimes, mitzad tamim are you doing lawyers, but they interact. Aber lav davke. Es muss nicht so sein. V'ike atam yesh leima, so we just read the kitzur quickly. Yesh leima dehine rotzen hu atzmi, beli sibas tam vohine. Okay, my rotzen hu atzmi da'avu ben. Yeah, but we see that the father can want his son and he can not be separable from him. I feel that the son tut him eipig nachas ruch, tut him auf zeloches rachmon in het land. But the ganze Indian afu pikene will the son sein. So we see that that's eipig Indian ha'oinig, or kaparim ha'oras ha'oinig al derech harogio. And afu pikene he wants him davke. V'chein hu rotzen ha'atzmi b'nishamis Yisrael mitzad atzmam v'zeh inyan ha'zichroina. That's what we're working to get to. That on Rosh Hashanah the inyan from the zichroinais is al klolos ishtaushes al idei ha'zikorim b'nishamis Yisrael v'zeh ha'yem tchilas ma'aseh klo, that Adam Arishan, he's the tchila of the whole thing. Tchila meaning the pnimis v'atzmiyas. Ubchinas zikorim pnimish al idei zeh zikorim chitoni. Omer zikorin loyim rishoin, tchilas maasercha first, and then zikorin loyim rishoin, meaning the inyan from Seder Ishtalshos. Okay, Krisis bris, she's always kashus pnimi. Who Krisis bris de Avram al teror mitzvahs of Moshe al Tshuva. You notice he doesn't mention Noach here for the moment. But gam im yisrachachu, even if there'll be a richuch, nonetheless the inyan from the zikorin pnimi is still there. Betachlis reimemes. So it's not shaykh any richuk from the Shomis Yisrael. So how can it be a zikorin afil when the Shomis Yisrael? It's not shaykh to say they become distant. So he said, what is that? In Elikus, betachlis reimim, so atzmiyas, on Rosh Hashanah particularly, v'yeridus anishomas lamata, or befrata lidei achet. So that's how they're misrachik, that the Eibishter, Kaviochel on Rosh Hashanah goes up into the Atzmas Mamish, and the Nishamas remember that they haven't been as Shane in Kiyum Mitzvahs Kol Hashanah. There's an emphasis on the Goydel HaYerida Afilu Mitzad Chait, and HaGoydel HaRimim is Kilo Aliyah Lamaila of the Atzmas. Aber not that it's Mamish and Emes Richu. V'al zeu zikorim bris apnimi she's kasha atzmei kaviyocho. We remind the Eibishter that he was makashi himself with Nishamas Yisrael, but even atzmi. And like we pointed out, that nonetheless, even though that's the case, there is still this inyan of the Helem HaAtzmis on the first night of Rosh Hashanah. Or B'meh B'Shofar, well, that's the inyan from Tzayke the Tshuva, that in order to bring the Iskashus Pnimis into the Iskashus Achitzonius, then you need to do something. You can't just wait for that to happen, and that's the inyan of Tzayke. We see that the mile of Tzayke, and we brought the whole dogma from the Ben HaMelech that he got separated from his father with the Gamsa Moshe and the Baal Shem Tov, that after the inyan from Tzayke reaches the Pnimis HaMashpia. Raya, Me'atoira, and then we bring rayas from the Pesukim, Mizikorin de Noach. Oh, here Noach comes into the picture. Here we see that even though Noach didn't have any Hemshech, Loi Hirkim Mimeno Tzadikim Umeginim, except for Malki Tzedek, that Noach Shaloi Hoya Teira Mitzvahs Adayin, and also Zikorin Ha'ovis Vitzias Mitzrayim. They were also prior to the Etzeminian of Matan Torah. V'chein Rotzen Ha'atzmi to the Shomin. Oh, nonetheless, that was a Rotzen Ha'atzmi Shalamayla, the Zikorin Pnimi, what that led to automatically the Zikorin Chitzaini. V'chein Rotzen Ha'atzmi to the Shomin Yisrael Berakus, v'kamei b'mesilas nevi b'pel mamish b'lihira g'shein klal, v'kamei achuchim shekol zeh hu Rotzen Ha'atzmi. V'hinei be'etzem mohusam, the Rotzen v'eineg heina hafochim zemizeh. Here we see not only that they're not a sibah one to the other, but they're even, they function and they're what you might call their oifen of doing things, and their oifen of iskalas, mamish afuchim zemizeh. Da'oineg hu behelim benefesh, v'rotzen hu b'iskalas davker. Now here we're going to see that the inyan from helim means like the inyan from aliyah, be'er choize betoich ayetzem. Mashenken the inyan from rotzen is davke a koya, what the Eibishter made in the etzem hanefesh, that's davke megala es atzmai. And therefore, once again, that implies a koyach rav, that the etzim should be begoloi. And therefore we'll see that comes b'merutza, and that's what he says now. The rotzen hu loshem merutza are running forth. Shehu is galas v'amshochas hanefesh. Now, it's brought down over there in Samavov that when something has to come b'merutza, well, that's a siman of his gabris pnimis in the zayt. When it comes dafki b'merutza or b'koyach, that's a siman that there's like a build-up, on the inside, which causes the merutza. Like we see the athlete, when he runs, then he sort of makes a build-up. In other words, that dafki with these gabris ha-koyach ha-toikiv, ha-koyach ha-takiv of that particular koyach. Avamir, the etzim fact that rotzen comes b'merutza, then that's a sign that it's galus v'amshochas ha-nefesh mamish b'emes. And therefore he said, u'kemoi ha-yeshes nafshecho shehu is galus ha-nefesh u'merutzosei le'ezeh dova. Well, this is the famous statement that Avraham Avinu made to Ephraim when he was trying to get the phone in the Maras HaMakpelah. And he said, "Ayeshes nafshecho lichberes meizil milfonai." And first he said to the Hittites, but "Ayeshes nafshechem lichberes meizil milfonai." And then later he said it to Ephraim, "Ayeshes nafshecho." So that's a pill. It was b'derech klal. There are certain places in Siddur where we avoid bringing the raya and dort. That nefesh and rotzen have got a kesher. And there's other pesukim where nefesh and rotzen can have a ishtavas, and they can mean one the other. And the Rebbe's got a footnote in, I think it's in Toshin Ches. The Rebbe Melech Meshirka, I got a footnote. Why is it that we, in some Maimorim, we're nimno from to bring this raya and what Avraham Avinu said to Ephraim. And the Rebbe writes over there, Vibal's Ephraim was the koyach ha-sitra achra. He was like the dafki, the koyach ha-liumazeh. And with all the inyanim, Ephraim is offer, that offers the inyan van Eibach zrizos, the kedusha, v'chulei k'mavu, and Torah. So the Rebbe writes over there that what Avraham Avinu said to Ephraim, Elav dafki, that's a raya in Tachlis HaKedusha. Because he was talking to him. So maybe Avraham Avinu at the Drei, how do you call it? Drei the Tung a bissel. If you're talking with the leader of the Sitra Achra, you don't necessarily say everything purely glatik. I say, that's the maskana from Rebbe, why it is we don't always bring a raya. Over here we see when he wants to bring a raya that the inyan for nefesh is dafki, the inyan for merutzas v'amshoches ha nefesh, even for merutzah v'amshocher, that he brings dafki a raya from door. Hayeshes nafshecho, what that was Avraham Avinu talking to Ephraim as I'm giving the Maras HaMakpelah. Because here we see it betachas ha'izgalas in this particular movement that we want to bring out. Hayesh es nafshecho. Yesh is the universe. It comes in a form of yeshes, is galas. Aki tikifas. You say hayesh doesn't mean the yesh of your nefesh. Now remember, hayesh es nafshecho. Are you prepared to give away your whole, as it were, your whole nefesh? And have a rotz enough to give him me the Maras HaMakpelah. So we see that he was the gilif in the Sitra Achra, Afal Pikay, because he said at the beginning, of course, what could there be between us, but he was already throwing a hint. Aurora counted him out 400. Shekel let's say him, and the ganze, Arichas Adova. So I mean, soft or soft, Ayini Mochiach Alatzmoy, why it is we don't always bring a Rav and do it. Because soft or soft, Avraham Avinu was dealing here with the what you might call the pichus of the Sitra, or the header of pichus of the Sitra Achra. When he said, would you want to give me the Maras HaMakpelah? It's a shayna shtikel neches the Maras HaMakpelah that you want to give it. And therefore he said, Ayesh es nafshecho, is your whole nefesh begolo, even from the yesh mamis. Well, that's in him from Marutza v'izgala. Shehu izgala sanefesh Marutzosa ila ezadova. V'yesh ha'rotzen hu b'chinas yischoyrer as davke. Shemesoyrer be'eze inyan, shu inyan izgalas. והיינו שלפי שהרוצן הוא חיצוניוס הנפש. דאם ישו הוא עצמי, הרי הוא בחינת חיצוניוס או עצמס. על כן, כל עניון הוא בחינת איסגלה. Here we have to play careful with this word chitonius. Over here there's written two nakudas. And the Rebbe said the very fact that we start off with the idea of marutza, and then we said marutza means hamshocha. So marutza means a running. Yeah, marutza means the unit from rita. Therefore, it's brought in certain. It's for him that rotzen is from the word rotz, yeah, from the word to run. And mamela is something which is marutza is indicatory of isgabras at a koyer dafki to bring the whole shleimus or inyan. Just like when the runner runs, he wants to indicate kol shleimus koichoi. Yeah, how do you say he wants to win the race? He'll bring in the ganze in k'moshe be his galas. So then the Rebbe is moisef another inyan, and that's because the rotzen is aisoiras. In other words, that it's got to be misoira b'toich atzmei. There has to be like it were, as it were, an awakening. Now, awakening has in itself zwei inyanim. First of all, an awakening has in itself a hemshich of what we just saw, the inyan from Rita, the inyan from Marutza. But the Ika inyan is you only awakened if you're already reckoning with a davar chutz mimcha. Something which is outside you causes a yisoiras. It's not really shy to say that you were Mesoira, mitzad dveikus ha'etzim, b'toich ha'etzim. That's nicht kein Mesoira. And therefore the Yoinig Atzmi is not Mesoira. The Yoinig Atzmi is just in a way of dveikus b'toich ha'etzim. And therefore the Rebbe said, why is there this whole inyan from Marutza which leads to Hamshocha, which is a inyan from his galas, b'shleimus amuven from his galas, because Rotzen is a Yisoiras. And a Yisoiras means that you're reckoning with the Dovashim of B'chutz, and so therefore he writes in brackets that it's inyan from Chitonias, and not Cholila in the moving, the moralische moving of Chitonias. Sometimes we say, Chitonias, we're playing something down. I know what we mean. We mean chitonius, we mean that its whole inyan is gilui. Its whole inyan is gilui. But what sort of gilui? Gilui of the etzem mamish. Yeah, the etzem itself, is nimshach klapei adova, which it needed to be mesorah, the aino inish b'chutz mimeno. And kimovu when I get to the inyan from Malucha, for example. The whole inyan from Malucha is called Yisoiras, and that comes dafki mitzat azulas. That's a sign that the inyan from Rotzen in Yonah is chitonius, the ainu to be chitonius from Lashon chutz. Yeah, that it's poyer afila in inyanim outside the Adam atzmai. Va'atainu hu davke behelem benefesh she'einu b'chinas marutza ki im mashe misanig bi'atzmai va'ainu gam shemisanig be'eza dovor Ein ze beginnen marutza ki imashe misanig biatmei. Purely digamaz. Amamira, what when you're misanig on a dover mesuyam, it's not that thing is goyrem yutainu by even Yoshia. What it is that you're misanig b'toich atzmecha, and you feel the mila of your kaviyocha, your etzem b'lishum interessant. It doesn't matter what is the mila of your etzem. You just feel the etzem inyan from tainuk. And tainuk is a inyan from pshitas inside the etzem. If there's something that you're misanig boy, then you're kiru mazmin, that inyan, into the etzem. And mitzad the fact that you feel this inyan of your etzem, belikol biur, what is your etzem, then you want to bring in something into that. You want to be mamshi, something into that it should also be, as it were, niklal into that tainug poshut va'atzm. So therefore, the whole inyan from oinig is that we bring things into a pshitas va'atzm. We're like mazmin them b'toichenu. A rotzen is that our etzem runs out, and wants to join, as it were, and be misgalit to them, and as it were, use them k'moy she'hem. For whatever may be the kavanah. The Ine von Oinig and nicht so. The Ine von Oinig is that you want to change the state of that thing from being a Dover Chutz, and you want it to be Misalim, and almost what you might be called Nishav, b'toich a-pshit is a-oinig shalcha. And therefore we find that the whole Ine von Oinig Shabbos, for example, that's called Al-Pitoir Oinig Shabbos, is a Ine von Aliyah v'dveikas. And the higher it goes, the less Hargosha v'dover. Until you come to Suda Shlichiyat, or the Rebbe Masbi and Ayin Beis in the Zweite Chelik, Korib L'Seife, that's why you don't have to eat. The Suda Shlichiyat, because it's the Ine von der Etzem Matayin, and the Loi Kol Hargosha. That it's been oile betoicha etzem, ad kedikach, that it's lost all the inyanim which were nizman betoicha, have lost all the eregas. They've been nimshich into the Tainug Aposh. And therefore we find a very fascinating Inyan. When I get to the inyanim of the Tainug of Shabbos, that it's like a hazmona, it's like your mazmin, azamin ba'ashto, yeah. Azamin means I invite. It's like I bring the inyanim into the pshitas of the ether, and that's what oinig is. Oinig is that you invite that thing and you elevate it to join the, as it were, the angesatzmi of the ether minaton ether, and that's your midas in von oinig, and that's what we mean. Oinig a poshet v'atzmi. It's got nothing to do with anything. It's just you're misanig that you're there. That's just what you are. In them is the Amer the Ketainu. And the Rebbe said it's not the rotten lichiyos. The gamla rotten lichiyos. Rotten lichiyos are a rotten that belongs in the field of rotten. No, this is just the very fact that you're there. It's a sort of that the nefesh just misani bilti ko prat in the etzeminim for what it was, or for what it is rather. And all that you misanig based over, you bring that into that can lose its identity. It goes through a stage where it has a little bit of a certain tvisus mokim regabi that oinig, and then it just goes out and it becomes niklav in the etzemoyin, and that's Shabbos. And therefore the Shabbos Friday night there's a little bit of a yachas, and then Shabbos is Atika Chadish, already Shabbos by day. There's already not so much Hergish anymore. And the Suda Shlishi is always Hergish Lagam. And that's what the Rebbe Rashab said. You don't have to wash or have a Suda. It's not Shaya. Because it's even higher than Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is Ine von Aliyah, and he have to dafka eat. So the Rebbe is Mafar, the Rebbe Malachim in the famous Sikha, the Rebbe talks about, you have to dafka bitoyim. The Rebbe Rashab said to bitoyim mashu. And Yom Yom he brings it, it's like litoyim mashu. And the Rebbe said if it's higher than Yom Kippur, was it litoyim mashu? The Rebbe said that's a sign that the Yossi, there's dafka going to be a goof. And that the Tainug are pshiti or poshit v'achmi, this is dafka going to be in a goof. You have to indicate that. You have to remind your Tainug achmi that he's shaykh efes. You have to be makarev ali inyanim and after the goof. And on the contrary, the goof will be niklal in them Tainug.
עבדת את השם בשמחה, זאת אומרת תענוג עצמי של
כן, כן, שמחה זה קצת משהו אחר, כי שמחה, אנחנו תכף נגיע לשמחה בהמשך הדרך, שמחה הוא עניין נסגלס חיצוניאס של העונג, והוא קצת דומה לרוצן. אתה מסנג עד כדי כך שכאילו יש כוח שדוחף את זה החוצה, וזה נקרא שמחה. אבל העונג עצמי לא מחפש את זה. העונג עצמי לא מחפש את זה, אבל השם נתן בתוכנו דבר שקוראים את השמחה, וזה כאילו מספר לו אילום שיש עניין של עונג. אתה מבין? זה כאילו מגל את זה.
זה לא עונג עצמי.
וזה יש בזה...
זה לא עונג עצמי.
לא. ויש בזה עניינים, שזה טוב שזה יהיה כך, כדי שסוף כסוף האדם הוא צריך לפעול בתוך האילום, זה טוב שהוא יהיה מעלה מה שקוראים שמחה. אז יש ככה זה מבוא פה. אבל עונג בתור עונג הוא רק משהו מסלם בתוך העצם. Eines ist Leo Perikut zu beweis, nis Bosch hat eine Rubis Galles, eine Jose Koer Naila bei Jose Prinz Oberlei Kli, al kochach shemisanik beise dover nire venigle bei atainu shemisanik. Yeah, aber einem Prinz Marutze klar after the brackets. We'll do the brackets in coming year because I touched on what we just said before about Chochmah. So the Rebbe said that Inig is such a high in and it's beyond Kli that sometimes it sort of, how do you call it, it bursts out through because the Kelim can't really stop it. And that's the Chochmas Sodom, Toya Ponov, Tzohu Ponos, or Rebbe Avu. Sometimes the Yonik just bursts out. Or not because Inyoni is his galas, sometimes it's just so delicate and high that the Kelim can't be Monea. But not that it means that its Inyan is his galas. It just sometimes happens. It's Kivunika, but not that its Inyan is his galas. Okay, so we'll hold there. Und es Rosh Chodesh Nissen is the Inu von Iskalis. Iskalis Hagiula, Iskalis Kol Inyanim. It's a Mataynu Raposhet. Will be Begiol Liositlo.
Then your mice of Beis Nissen.
Well, it's not Beis Nissen. Tonight's the Rosh Chodesh. Yeah, it's mice. Funny, I told him Isaac yesterday about the Rebbe Shab, I can't remember what it was. Oh yeah. It was interesting, somebody was saying to me on Motzei Shabbos that whenever he asks the Rebbe in Yigus Kodesh, at the beginning he doesn't get any answer, but then when it gets mamish urgent, it's almost mukhrach, to do the thing or not, then he gets an answer. So he said to me, but why does the Rebbe wait? Why doesn't he answer me, when I want the answer? Only when it's ein shum kilo prayer, then he seems to get the answer. Oh, it's an amazing thing, I tell you. It's just, my eyes popped out since Shabbos, either last night or the night before. I don't know if I should even mention him. He's one of our Over he and his wife are zeicha tazocha inyanim in the Yigus Kodesh, that is mamish pili ploys, sheva pili ploys. And the pili ploys, sheva pili ploys, is that he decided when he saw this letter that he was going to ask me. He was going to be mishayetz with me. And you'll see why it's a pili ploys. Because he has a slight problem with his zikaron. I mean, I don't think you'll mind me mentioning it. There's nothing serious there. So he went to some, I also have the same problem. I don't remember names. There's a guy in Australia that I know very well. And it's already about a week and a half. I want to even phone him. I can't remember his name. I remember his first name. I can't remember his second name. It's Philip in Perth. I've got to go. I'm going out to Perth straight after Pesach. I got to visit. She's already 94, the old lady. I got to go to. It's not so good doing it. Anyway, it's what I told him about. Oh yeah, I can't remember. So he went to some big. She have to see a neurolog. You have to do this and this and this. So he decides he's going to ask in the Yigus Kodesh. So you would never believe it. He gets an answer where the Rebbe talks in the letter to a person who's got problems with his zikaron. In the middle of nowhere, he writes a whole, he's got a problem with his zikaron. And the Rebbe later answers him, that he should be choizer mishnayos and he should learn things in Torah, and that will mamela be matachin zikaron. Unbelievable. He writes to somebody who's in Australia. He writes to this guy is a Yid, and he's got some throwback to Lubavitch. He's Mitzad his yichus, he goes back to Chassidei Lubavitch, and even from a certain shtetl in Russia where it was famous for Chassidei Lubavitch. And the Rebbe says to him that since you're in Melbourne, Australia, and there's a yeshiva and Anash, Mishtadlim, Bekiyum, Hafotzes, Yeshiva, and that, you should help them. And you should try to be Mishtadlim, and you should try to help them and help other people in Melbourne, to know about their Yiddishkeit and all that. And Blishum Sovik, it'll help your health and it'll help you, and you'll be Bein Aroich, a much better and more healthy person. And then he gets onto the Zikaron. And he said, and the Rebbe said the main thing is just to use things in Torah to sharpen your zikaron. Anyway, whatever. It's just unbelievable. He decided when even before he understood exactly what was in the letter, he's going to talk with me. But the whole the Australia, the yeshiva, and Anash, I'm a product of all those three. I'm a product of the yeshiva, but the fact that Anash were mishtadl to spread Yiddishkeit through the yeshiva, and that Anash, their whole inyan is the yeshiva. So I mean, I'm what you might call, you know, I had to call it the perfect target. I mean, that. And he decided he's going to ask me, and boom, stayed in the letter exactly what he needs to know. I mean, Philip Floyd. I mean, I could not believe my eyes. I'm not like that. So anyway, listen. So this guy asked me, why is it that he always gets at the last moment? So I said to him, you should realize that those who were mamish, very mukurovim to the Rebbeim used to leave them, they didn't bother with them. You know, last minute, and they used to give these unbelievable answers at the last minute. You know, somebody who's more distant, you have to deal with him more formally. Somebody who's mamish mukurav, yeah. That's the etzem k'moshehu, what you might call the informality of the etzem. So I told him, I said, about the Rebbe Rashab that I heard from Rav Land, he was very mukurav, you know, he was very close to the Rebbe. In the last years before, you know, in Tov Rosh Ayin Vov until Tov Rosh Pei. Very, very mukurav. So he had to go to the army. It was his turn to go and apply for the army. That's a big, you know, lachat on a person. It's a man, lachat. And all the bochim, they used to on Simchas Torah, those who had to, they used to go to the Rebbe Rashab during these fathers. You know the famous stories that the Rebbe used to give all these brachas to these guys. One, boom, 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 one after the other. He told them what would happen to them. You know all the unbelievable nevuahs which he gave. When I get to the Preziv. The Preziv was Russian for the, you know, the Giyuth. But he was, you know, being so close, you know, and he was like the Rebbe's secretary. He didn't go with all the bochim on Simchas Torah. So he waited, you know, they thought the Rebbe would tell him, you know. The Rebbe knew that he had to go, and the days are going by, and it's getting closer and closer. I need to know, it's not a push to zach, you know. He was expecting the Rebbe would say something to him. Days go by, and the Rebbe was up to him going. So he was getting very, you know, well, that's my So anyway, it's about 2 days before he said, and you got to know where, there was always two places you could go, and you need to know what you're doing, and decide how you're going to do it, make up sa'achona, if you say it's a machan. There's only a couple of days left. So he goes on the Rebbe, it's Haminyan Aklal, you know, and when he finished, also he couldn't hold himself back, and he said to the Rebbe, what's your time with mir? And he said in Yiddish, what's going to be with me, you know. So the Rebbe looked at him, and the Rebbe said, oh, dear, yeah, oh, you. The Rebbe said, yeah, it's not tight. There's still time. First of all, he thought the Rebbe would be angry, you know, what are you, mission right and money geschäftet, you know. But he said the Rebbe wasn't angry, and just looked at him and he said, oh, you, yeah, it's still time. You know. So he said it was Mami's the afternoon of the day before he was supposed to go. And he didn't know what he was going to do. And so he was standing, and all of a sudden the Rebbe came out of his door to go into another room on Samina, and the Rebbe walked through, and he happened to be there. And the Rebbe just nodded, and all of a sudden the Rebbe stopped and looked at him. The Rebbe said, oh yeah, the Rebbe said, wegen dein Giyus or something. The Rebbe said, I hold you should go to this in the city. Go over there, and that's it. So, yeah, that was the worst place. The other place was supposed to be better. People did get out, but in this place, it was just gefährlich. And the guy over there was a Russia, and it was just, you do it, it's just cynisch good, you know, to go there. I didn't know what to say. He was absolutely dumbfounded. And then the Rebbe said, oh, uns haben wir a Shochet dort. And the Rebbe said, we have a Shochet who lives in that city. Let's do one with the other, you know. And the Rebbe, what to say? He didn't know what to say. So he said to the Rebbe, should I send a telegram, you know, when I get out, you know. In other words, he was looking for a haftacha, you know, that saying, should I send a telegram when I get, I mean, the Rebbe say, oh yeah, send a telegram, and then he knows for sure that's going to be all right. You know. So the Rebbe said, no, don't nicht nötig, you know, not necessary. You know. So he goes over there, and he goes to the house of the Shochet. I say, he doesn't know anything about the Preziv, you know, he waits with them goon, he doesn't have any shaykhs for clout or the whole thing, he doesn't know anything about it, you know. So Rav Land said, maybe come with me, you know, the Rebbe mentioned that said, you're a sheikhet in the town. Come along with me. At least give me moral support. Okay. You go with him. But only up to a certain point. After that, you have to go in the line and stuff. So it's well on. They used to have to strip off everything. And they stood in line, they come out these big goyim, Rishoyim, and they used to sort of touch him here and then. They said, you go, you need da. So the guy that was in charge of it, he was a big Russia, Marusha, Beklal, and a Sayyid Israel. So he's coming up in the line, and he got onto it, but he left his telescope on. He didn't want to take off his telescope. His mom said his birthday, so he had his telescope on. So in the meantime, all of a sudden, there comes this guy that he's the guy, the big Russia. All of a sudden, he gets a telephone call. And a telephone call in those days, it was buildings away. There was no such thing as telephones. A telephone was a very rare thing. So I don't know how far away was the telephone. And somebody called him at the telephone. So he said, man, he starts cursing. And he said, nah. And they said, no, it's it's one of the superiors or something. You have to go. So he has to go spazieren, a long way away to answer this phone. So in the meantime, Zweiter steps in, and he's a shikha, he's been the whole time, plonking away these bottle of vodka, and he saw, he doesn't know clearly what's going on. So Ladler steps up to him, and also he looks at this telescope. And he shrays in Yiddish, he says, what should do it? What is that? What to sing? He said, it's supposed to be naked, what are you doing with that? What is it? In Russisch. I don't know what he can't tell him what a telescope, he doesn't know what to do. So all of a sudden the guy says, he said, du bist mishuge. He said, and he started shraying and tumming. He said, you're crazy. What are you doing in that thing? He said, this is Meshuggah. He shrays at him with Bazim that he's Meshuggah. So he picks up a stamp that was on the desk, and here's his piece of paper, and he slams down. Apostle, he's no good, because he says, get out of here. He said, Meshuggah. You see the unbelievable is going. First of all, this big Russia, he gets called away on a telephone. The shikha, drink, and he sees his telescope. What did I do with the sheikh? So he said to this day he doesn't know what the sheikh had to do with it. But I think he was some sort of schus, he had to come along. He's a sheikh in that city. It's like So I bought him a rife, and that mice, those who were very close, they get dealt with right at the last, sort of minute, don't have to worry. Because he claims he's had several answers, but mamish when it's desperate, when he asks, he doesn't usually.